The village of Ravenbrook had always been quiet, nestled at the edge of a forest so dense that sunlight barely touched the ground. The villagers lived simple lives, tending to livestock and crops, always wary of the shadows between the trees. Stories of dragons and spirits had been told for generations, but most dismissed them as tales to scare children. That was, until the whisper began. It started on a night heavy with fog. The moon was a pale sliver, barely illuminating the jagged silhouettes of trees. In the distance, faint voices drifted on the wind, soft, melodic, and chilling. At first, no one thought it strange. People whispered to one another sometimes, after all. But then the whispers began calling names. Names of villagers who were asleep, sitting by their fires, or tending their animals. Elias, a young hunter with a sharp eye and quicker reflexes, was among the first to hear it clearly. At first, he thought it was the wind playing tricks. But then, as he lay in his modest cabin, he heard it distinctly. Elias. Elias. The whisper was closer than the wind, yet it carried no weight of air. It seemed to echo from within the very walls. The hair on his neck stood on end. He rose, hand on the hilt of his hunting knife, peering through the fogged window. The forest beyond was dark, almost black, with shadows that seemed to move independently of the trees. He ran to the edge of the village, heart pounding, and saw a faint flicker of light deep in the forest. It wasn't fire, not quite. It pulsed, as if breathing. Elias felt an icy grip around his chest, a primal warning. He had hunted wolves, bears, and worse, yet something about this felt different. Intelligent. Waiting. The next morning, a scream shattered the dawn. Villagers rushed to the northern fields, where a young shepherd named Thomas had been tending sheep. His hut was gone, reduced to splintered wood and ashes. Not a trace of him remained, no footprints, no blood, nothing. Only a faint, curling trail of black smoke that vanished before anyone could follow it. Fear spread faster than the morning mist. Parents clutched their children, merchants abandoned their stalls, and hunters gripped their weapons tightly, eyes scanning the forest's edge. Elias met with the village elder, Marek, a stooped man whose voice rarely betrayed emotion, but now trembled. Dragons, they were never just stories, Marek whispered. Somewhere beyond the forest, one waits. They feed not only on flesh but on fear. If it has marked us, it will return. Elias's stomach churned. He had always admired tales of heroism and courage, but the reality was suffocating. He wanted to disbelieve, to tell himself it was an animal, a rogue band of thieves, anything but the thing Marek spoke of. Yet, the whispers had grown louder, threading into his mind even in daylight. That night, Elias decided he would not hide. He would find the source. He took his bow, quiver full of arrows, and a small steel knife he had inherited from his father. As he stepped into the fog, the whisper greeted him again. Elias, come. This time, it was closer. Almost intimate. Almost human. But the tone carried no kindness. Only curiosity, and malice. The forest swallowed him, shadows bending unnaturally, trees seeming to stretch toward him. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves sent a jolt through his body. His breaths came in ragged bursts. Hours passed, or perhaps only minutes, time felt distorted. The forest was alive with sounds that had no source. And then he saw it. A faint shimmer, like heat rising from the earth, hovering among the trees. The shadows danced around it, swirling unnaturally, and a low vibration hummed in the air, almost like a song of warning. Elias froze, bow drawn. From the shimmer, 2 points of light emerged, glowing like molten gold. They were eyes, large, intelligent, and piercing. The creature that bore them was massive, though the darkness concealed most of its body. Scales glinted with an otherworldly sheen, and smoke curled from nostrils wide enough to swallow a man. Yet it did not move closer. It simply observed. And then, it whispered. Do you hear them? The voices you cannot save. Elias staggered backward, heart hammering. His instincts screamed to flee, but curiosity, foolish, human curiosity, held him in place. The whispers were no longer just outside the forest. They were inside his mind, echoing fears he hadn't admitted even to himself. For the first time, he understood. This was no ordinary beast. It was a predator that hunted not with claws or fire, but with the mind. And now, Elias was its chosen witness. As dawn's first light began to push back the shadows, Elias stumbled back to Ravenbrook, silent and pale. The villagers were awake, but the peace of morning had vanished. Marek watched him approach, eyes narrowing. Did you see it? He asked. Elias swallowed hard. The memory of those eyes, those whispers, burned into his mind. I think it's waiting, he whispered. Marek's face darkened. Then we are all waiting too. And waiting is the most dangerous thing in the world when a dragon whispers in the dark. The morning after Elias had heard the dragon's whisper, Ravenbrook was quiet in a way that made the air feel thick and heavy. Birds avoided the treetops, their songs stifled. Livestock huddled closer to the barns. Even the wind seemed afraid to stir. The village, once alive with mundane chatter, now existed in a fragile silence, as if the forest itself had pressed a finger to the village's lips. Elias could not remain idle. Sleep had been broken by dreams of molten eyes and whispers winding through the trees. He could still hear the dragon's words in his head, echoing with cruel clarity. Do you hear them? The voices you cannot save. Determined to face it, he packed his bow, arrows, and his father's knife once more, strapping a leather pouch of dried meat and water to his belt. He walked to the forest's edge, heart hammering not from fear alone, but from the cold pull of destiny he could neither resist nor understand. The fog hung thicker than the day before. Each step into the trees felt like stepping into a liquid darkness. Branches clawed at his clothing, and unseen creatures rustled just beyond sight. The air smelled of smoke, but no fire burned, only that strange metallic tang that left a bitter taste on his tongue. Hours, or maybe minutes, he could no longer tell, passed in uneasy silence. And then he saw it. A shadow moved among the trees. Not like a wolf or a bear. Larger. Impossible. It glided over the forest floor with a fluid grace, as though the trees themselves parted to make way for it. Elias's breath caught in his throat. The creature was immense, wings folded yet still massive, dark scales catching the meager light and turning it into a ripple of liquid shadow. Its head was high, elongated, crowned with jagged horns that shimmered faintly. Smoke coiled from its nostrils, curling in patterns that seemed deliberate, almost intelligent. And then it looked at him. Two eyes of molten gold burned into Elias's soul. They were not animal. Not blind instinct. They were intelligent, curious, and terrifyingly patient. The dragon's gaze seemed to pierce through the fog, through the forest, and directly into him. Elias raised his bow, hand trembling. His fingers brushed the string, but the arrow felt weightless, almost irrelevant. The dragon did not roar. It did not attack. Instead, the forest fell utterly silent, as if waiting for something inevitable. And then it whispered. Elias, come closer. The sound was not carried by air, but by thought. It threaded itself through his mind, gentle yet insistent, like silk brushing across raw skin. His knees weakened. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, yet curiosity, and a dread fascination, held him rooted. He took a cautious step forward. Do you know why I watch you? The dragon whispered. The voice was calm, almost conversational. Yet in it lay a weight that made the air feel suffocating. You are afraid, but not yet ready to understand. Elias swallowed hard. His mind raced. He remembered the village elder's words, that dragons could feed not only on flesh, but on fear itself. He could feel the truth of it now. Each heartbeat, each frantic thought, was nourishment for this creature. He tried to aim, to fire an arrow, but the forest seemed to conspire against him. Shadows lengthened unnaturally. The ground shifted beneath his feet. The dragon's golden eyes followed his every movement, and with each glance, Elias felt memories he had buried surfacing, fears he had never confronted, faces of villagers missing, screams trapped in smoke. Then a low rumble rolled through the trees, not a roar but a vibration in the air, like the world itself trembling. Leaves shivered, the fog swirled, and Elias realized the creature's presence was more than physical. It warped the world around it. The dragon moved, or rather, the shadows moved, carrying the dragon with them. One massive wing unfolded, spanning the width of the forest path, and the air shimmered with heat. Smoke and fire twisted in spirals, yet no flame touched the ground. Elias's bow fell from his hands as instinct screamed. This was not a being to fight with arrows. You feel the voices, don't you? The dragon murmured. It leaned closer, smoke curling from its mouth like a living mist. They are mine, and yet, they linger in you. Elias's mind reeled. Whispers he had tried to forget, the missing villages, the cries in the dark, suddenly surged like a tide, echoing in his thoughts. Each echo was sharper, crueler, as if the dragons will shape them from the shadows themselves. Panic clawed at him, but so did defiance. He remembered Marek's warning, the dragon was patient. It fed on fear, yes, but understanding its patterns could give him a chance. Summoning every ounce of courage, Elias forced his mind to steel itself. He would not run. Not yet. The dragon tilted its head, as if amused by the resistance. Its golden eyes burned brighter, and a soft hiss escaped its lips, a sound that could have been laughter or a warning, Elias could not tell. Do you wish to survive, hunter? Elias clenched his fists. Survival alone would not be enough. He had to understand. He had to fight back, somehow. And yet, he knew deep down that understanding this creature might come at a cost he could not imagine. The dragon's whispering faded slightly, as if it allowed him a moment of clarity. But the threat lingered. Elias realized he was not merely facing a predator. He was facing something older, wiser, and far more dangerous than any human mind could fully comprehend. The shadows stretched, smoke twisted, and Elias stepped back, heart hammering. The forest seemed alive, bending around the dragon's will. He knew the creature would return, that the whispers would not stop, and that the path ahead would demand more courage than he had ever known. He had seen it. He had felt it. And the dragon had marked him. Remember this, hunter, the voice lingered in his mind as he retreated. The dark listens, and waits. Elias returned to Ravenbrook, but the village felt like a ghost of itself. Windows shuttered, doors bolted, and the fog seemed to creep closer with every passing hour. He could still hear the dragon's whisper in his mind, winding through his thoughts, bending them like smoke around a fire. Sleep was impossible, even the briefest rest brought dreams filled with molten eyes and voices that were not there. Marek, the village elder, met him outside the central square. His stooped figure looked older than the last time Elias had seen him, eyes shadowed with worry and something else, knowledge too heavy to bear alone. You saw it, Marek said, his voice barely above a whisper, yet sharp enough to cut through the fog. I did, Elias admitted. It's not like anything I've ever faced. It watches, it knows, it speaks to my mind. Marek nodded slowly, leading Elias toward the outskirts of the village. Then you must see the ruins, he said. It's time you understood what you're dealing with. The ruins were an old stone structure, half swallowed by the forest. Ancient carvings, worn by centuries, depicted dragons entwined with humans, sometimes fighting, sometimes kneeling. Elias traced his fingers over the symbols. One inscription, more legible than the rest, read. The dragon of whispers comes to feed on fear. It steals the voices of those who cannot resist. Elias shivered. His mind flashed to the missing villages, the way their names had been whispered, then snatched from memory. He realized with a sinking feeling that this dragon did not just hunt flesh. It hunted the mind. It twisted reality with sound and shadow, feeding on terror and doubt. Marek continued, his voice grim. Legends say this type of dragon is older than the forests themselves. It is patient, intelligent, and it learns. The more it understands fear, the stronger it becomes. Every whisper you hear, every shadow that moves unnaturally, these are its tools. Its prey is not just your body, Elias. It is your mind. Elias clenched his fists. How do we fight something like that? You don't, Marek said. Not with weapons. Not with arrows. Only by understanding, by mastering the fear it uses against you. And even then, it will test you. It will twist your worst thoughts, make you question what is real and what is illusion. A sudden gust of wind rattled the broken stones. Elias spun, bow raised, but saw only the fog swirling between the columns. Yet the whispers returned, louder now, threading through his mind like claws across his skull. You cannot save them, you cannot stop me, you are alone. Elias's knees buckled. He had tried to suppress his fear, but the dragon seemed to know every hidden thought, every private doubt. Faces of missing villagers flickered through his vision, their cries mingling with the whispers. He realized that this was the dragon's power. It could manipulate memory, perception, and sound itself, making every step forward a battle against madness. He forced himself to focus. The carvings on the walls offered a clue. They depicted not just the dragon, but a pattern. The dragon's interaction with humans always followed a cycle: fear, manipulation, confrontation, and then disappearance. The dragon fed on the terror it inspired, yet it did not always kill immediately. It studied, learning, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Elias realized that he had become part of that cycle. The dragon's whispers were not just threats, they were lessons. It wanted him to see what it could do, to test the limits of his courage and perception. And if he failed, it would consume him completely, mind and body alike. Suddenly, one of the shadows near the ruins shifted unnaturally. Elias's heart leapt, and the whispers grew frantic, pressing into him from every direction. Elias, why do you resist? Fear is natural. Fear is delicious. Give in, and I will take it all. He took a deep breath, trying to ground himself. I am not yours to break, he muttered, though his voice sounded small even to his own ears. I will understand you, or I will die trying. A movement in the fog caught his attention. He saw a faint shimmer, like heat rising from stone, but distorted, bending the air around it. The dragon was near. He could feel it before he saw it, the way the shadows bent, the temperature of the air changing, the weight of intelligence pressing down on him. Elias noticed something else. The whispers seemed to echo not just the dragon's thoughts, but fragments of his own. He realized the dragon could manipulate fear by amplifying memory and thought, twisting his own mind against him. Every step forward was a battle to keep reality intact. Marek spoke again, voice low and steady. Do not run from what you fear, Elias. Face it. Understand it. That is the only way to survive. Elias nodded, even as the shadows deepened and the fog thickened. He felt the dragon watching, studying, testing him. The ruins themselves seemed to pulse with a dark energy, the whispers growing louder, coiling around him, trying to pull him into despair. But he stood firm. For the first time, he decided not to flee, not to hide, and not to resist blindly. The dragon was patient. And Elias knew now that to face it, he would need more than courage, he would need insight, cunning, and a mind sharper than the creature's own. And so, as the fog swallowed the ruins, and whispers of lost villages twisted in his thoughts, Elias took his first step toward understanding the dragon. He did not yet know how he would survive, or if he would, but he understood one thing clearly: this dragon was not just a beast of fire and scales. It was a predator of the human mind, and only by learning its secrets could he hope to endure what was coming. The dragon waited. And Elias walked deeper into the darkness, listening to the whispers, determined to uncover the truth. The night air was thick with fog, curling like smoke around the trees and ruins. Every shadow seemed alive, shifting with intent. Elias walked slowly, bow in hand, knife at his belt, senses stretched taut. He could feel the dragon before he saw it, a pressure in the air, a vibration that seemed to twist the ground beneath his feet. Every whisper in his mind was sharper now, more insistent, as if the dragon knew he was close. Elias, come, or flee, it makes no difference. The forest opened onto a rocky cliff overlooking the valley below. Elias paused, taking in the jagged landscape. This was where he had decided to confront the creature, to lure it away from the village and face it on ground where he might have some advantage. But as he stepped forward, the whispers intensified, echoing from all directions. The missing villagers' voices intertwined with the dragon's, pleading, crying, mocking. Elias's heart raced, and for a moment, he faltered. The shadows thickened, pressing against him like living fingers. He could hear the dragon breathing, or perhaps it was the forest itself, and the sound was low, deliberate, and terrifying. Then, from the swirling fog, 2 points of molten gold appeared, hovering at eye level. The dragon emerged, larger than he had imagined. Its wings, folded but immense, spanned almost the width of the clearing. Scales shimmered like obsidian in the dim light, and smoke curled from its nostrils in patterns that made the fog dance unnaturally. Its eyes were calm, almost amused, yet every glance carried a weight that seemed to pierce into the soul. You brought yourself here, hunter, the dragon whispered, its voice threading through Elias's mind. Do you understand what you face? Elias raised his bow, but his hands trembled. The forest seemed to distort around him, rocks appeared closer or farther, shadows twisted into impossible shapes. He realized, with growing horror, that the dragon could manipulate perception itself. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet he forced himself to remain. I am not afraid, he said, though the words felt hollow even to him. Ah, the dragon murmured. Fear is not merely a feeling, Elias. It is sustenance, a lens through which I see the world. The more you resist, the more vivid your mind becomes to me. A low rumble vibrated through the cliff. The dragon's wings unfurled slightly, and the fog swirled into spirals, carrying whispers and fragments of memory. Elias could see fleeting images of the missing villagers, their faces twisted in terror, voices calling out in confusion and despair. It was a vision designed to crush him, to make him falter. Elias shook his head, gripping the bow tighter. I will not let you control me, he muttered. But even as he said it, he could feel the tug of the whispers, drawing his thoughts into panic. The dragon tilted its head, eyes gleaming. Smoke spiraled from its mouth, coiling around Elias like a living thing. You feel the weight of every soul I touch. You imagine their screams. You see their end before it comes. Do you wish to survive, hunter? Or do you wish to join them? Elias staggered but held his ground. He had prepared for this moment, but no preparation could have readied him for the dragon's mental assault. His mind ached, every memory of failure, every doubt, every hidden fear magnified by the whispers. Yet beneath the terror, a spark of clarity burned. He remembered Marek's words, "Do not run from what you fear. Face it. Understand it." With effort, Elias forced his mind to focus on what was real, the weight of the ground beneath his boots, the sound of his own heartbeat, the rhythm of his breathing. The dragon's presence was immense, but it was not invincible. Its power relied on fear and perception, and if he could anchor himself, he could resist. The dragon's golden eyes narrowed, as if noting his determination. Smoke coiled tighter, fog twisted, and the cliff seemed to pulse with energy, yet Elias did not flinch. He felt the creature's curiosity, almost like a predator observing an unusual prey. "Interesting," it whispered. "You are bold and foolish. I will test you further." The ground trembled. Rocks shifted as if moved by unseen hands. Shadows stretched toward Elias, carrying echoes of the missing villagers' voices. He swung his knife at one, but the shadow dissolved into mist before he touched it. The dragon had turned his fears into tangible forms, testing his courage, his perception, his will to survive. Elias took a deep breath, centering himself. He realized then that he could not fight the dragon with strength or weapons alone. He had to fight with his mind, with his courage, and with his understanding of the whispers. Each shadow, each echo of fear, was a test, a challenge to see if he could maintain clarity under pressure. "Do you understand now?" the dragon asked, voice low and vibrating through the fog. "I am not merely a beast. I am patience. I am observation. I am every fear you have buried and every shadow you have ignored." Elias nodded, slowly, forcing his mind to sharpen. "I understand. And I will endure." The dragon lowered its head slightly, smoke curling in gentle spirals. Its eyes seemed to study him with curiosity rather than hatred. For a brief moment, the forest held its breath. Then, with a movement both terrifying and graceful, the dragon withdrew slightly, wings folding, and the whispers softened, but did not vanish. Elias realized he had survived the first test. But survival was only the beginning. The dragon had observed him, studied him, and now he was marked. Every step he took from this moment on would carry the weight of knowledge that he was dealing with something far older, far smarter, and far more dangerous than any man or beast. He had faced it, and lived. But the dragon's whispers lingered in his mind, soft and patient, promising that the confrontation was far from over. "The dark listens," it murmured. "And waits." Elias turned from the cliff, knowing the forest and the dragon would test him again. The shadows may bend, and the whispers may claw at his mind, but he had taken the first step toward understanding. And in a world where fear was the deadliest weapon, understanding was the only way to survive. The dawn was thin and cold, the sky streaked with gray light that barely cut through the lingering fog. Elias had returned to the cliff where he had faced the dragon, yet the forest felt different now, heavier, alive in ways that defied reason. The whispers had followed him, but now they were insistent, almost urgent, carrying fragments of the missing villagers' voices, their pleas interwoven with the dragon's calm, patient menace. "Elias, you have learned, but will you endure?" He gripped his father's knife tightly, feeling the cold leather and steel grounding him. He knew the dragon would not appear in the same form, not fully, until he allowed it, or until it chose to reveal itself. But he could feel its presence, immense and intelligent, threading through the shadows. It was patient. It had waited centuries, and Elias was only one mortal man. And then it appeared. From the fog, the massive form emerged, wings folded but casting a shadow that stretched like night itself across the cliff. Its eyes, molten gold and unnervingly calm, fixed on him. Smoke drifted from its nostrils, curling into spirals that seemed to move with intent. It did not roar, it did not charge. It simply studied him, as if weighing every heartbeat, every thought. "You understand now," it whispered, its voice threading into his mind, "that I am beyond mere strength. I see fear. I see doubt. I see the very soul of man." Elias swallowed hard. He had faced it once, and survived, but now he realized the dragon had never been testing his body, it had been testing his mind, his courage, his capacity to endure. The missing villagers' voices pulsed in his thoughts, echoing the truth. The dragon did not kill blindly. It offered a choice, a bargain, and Elias had to decide whether to accept it, or die. "I can grant you power beyond imagining," the dragon continued. "I can silence the whispers forever, give you the strength to protect your people, to bend fear itself to your will, but at a cost. Surrender your fear, and you become part of me. Resist, and you face death. Choose, hunter. Choose wisely. Elias's mind raced. The villagers' voices cried in fragments, and he could feel the weight of their lives pressing on him. If he accepted, he might save them, or he might lose himself entirely. But if he refused, he could die here, alone, consumed by a creature that thrived on terror and patience. He thought of Ravenbrook, of Marek, of the people who had trusted him to protect them. He thought of the whispers that had haunted him, and of the courage he had summoned to survive each test. He realized that the dragon's bargain was not just about survival, it was a test of character. I will not give in, Elias said aloud, voice shaking but firm. I will not surrender who I am to your whispers. The dragon tilted its head, smoke curling like living fingers. Its golden eyes glimmered with curiosity and something like approval. Bold, foolish, yet admirable. Few humans have the will to resist. Few even understand the choice they face. Suddenly, the fog thickened, shadows stretching unnaturally. The whispers intensified, forming voices Elias had never heard, mocking, threatening, screaming in unison. The dragon's form expanded, wings unfurling slightly, but its voice remained calm. Do you understand what resisting truly means, hunter? You may survive, but at what cost? Elias's heart pounded, every instinct screaming to flee, to run from the overwhelming presence. But he grounded himself, remembering the carvings in the ruins, the lessons of fear, the first confrontation. The dragon's whispers were powerful, but they were not absolute. He had learned to anchor himself to reality, to focus on what he could control. I understand, he whispered back. I understand that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to face it. I will endure, dragon. Not because I am stronger than you, but because I refuse to let you define me. For a long moment, the forest was silent, the whispers receding slightly as if the dragon was reconsidering. Then, slowly, the massive form lowered its head, eyes locking with his. Smoke drifted lazily from its nostrils, and the fog began to thin. Very well, Elias, it murmured. You have chosen, wisely, or perhaps stubbornly. I will not consume you, not yet. But remember this, the dark always listens. I will wait. I will return. And when I do, your courage will be tested again. Elias stumbled backward, gasping, his legs weak but steady. The dragon lifted into the fog, wings stretching wide, then vanished, leaving only the echo of its whispers lingering in his mind. The villagers' voices, now free of the dragon's manipulation, faded into quiet memory. He sank to the ground, exhausted but alive. The choice had been made, and for now, he had survived. But he knew that survival was only the beginning. The dragon's patience was infinite, its intelligence unmatched, and its whispers eternal. One day, it would return, and he would have to face it again, perhaps wiser, perhaps more fearful, but always tested. As the first true rays of sunlight cut through the thinning fog, Elias rose, brushing dirt from his clothes. He looked toward Ravenbrook, toward the people he had sworn to protect. The village awaited him, unaware of the confrontation that had taken place on the cliff above. And Elias understood the truth he had been forced to learn. Courage was not a single act, nor a one-time victory. It was a choice, made repeatedly, in the face of darkness, in the presence of fear, and under the gaze of beings that understood the mind better than any human could. The dragon had marked him, yes, but it had also given him a gift. The knowledge that even against ancient, incomprehensible power, a human mind, anchored in courage and understanding, could endure. For now, Elias walked back to the village, listening to the quiet, to the normal rhythm of life, knowing that the whispers of the dragon would return, but also knowing that he would face them, again and again, without surrender. The cliff behind him was empty, the fog lifting, but the memory of molten gold eyes, the weight of intelligence and patience, and the taste of the dragon's whispers would remain forever. And deep in the forest, in the shadows that seemed to watch and wait, the dragon listened. Patient. Curious. Hungry. Elias had survived. But the game was far from over.